Yay, morning, comrades. Hope everybody's doing great. We're here to talk about Atelier Elie, which I got some clarification on my misunderstanding of some names that I probably used. I don't know if I used the name incorrectly, but so Atelier Marie stars Marie, obviously. But then I'm playing the remake, and they keep calling her Marlo. I think it's Marlone or something. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? It's just like some bad like localization, which is like running, it runs rampant. So I'm like, maybe it is. Maybe they just changed the name because they're assholes or whatever. But no, apparently, because I find the same thing here. I'm playing Atelier Elie, and then they keep calling her like Elhart or Elfer. I think it's Elfer. And then someone at some point is like, oh, I go by Ellie, it's my nickname or something. And I'm like, oh, and then I look into it and it's like, same thing with Marie. And Marie's like the nickname of Marlo or whatever it is. And I was like, that is so confusing. Why would you do that? But it's like legit, I guess. Anyway, Atelier Elie is the final, or is the middle game of the original Salburg trilogy. So it's Marie, Elie, and then Lily. So Lily is a prologue for the story, right? It stars Lily, and it has young Ingrid and young, I'm gonna butcher this name, like Helmina or Herminia, depending on like your translation. So because in Japan, for those of you who aren't aware, who aren't like at least mildly weebish like I, there's like an like an R sound, right? But depending on the region and your accent, it can drastically change from like almost like a hard like like. So we look at somebody like Ray, right, from Evangelion. Like Ray, there's a lot of Sailor Moon. There's a lot of Ray is like a very common name, like REI. So Ray. But depending on where you're at, it's gonna be like Ray, or it's gonna be like Ray, or it's gonna be like Lay, right? So it's like this LR thing, and so oftentimes you'll see translations, and it'll just be like kind of drastically different of how you actually like how the name's translated, depending on who's doing the translation, where they're from, how they kind of like hear the sound, yada 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 yada, right? And there's not really a standard that I've ever seen like fully established, so that's just kind of how it is. I guess there's like argument about it still, but usually certain things will be like more pronounced. So I feel like like Ray, you almost always see Ray with an R. You almost never see it with L, but sometimes you do, right? And you may not even register it in your brain if you're watching like a sub or something, because you just assume they're different names, because it's like, oh yeah, in English it's like Lei versus like Ray, but it's actually the exact same name, like the same katakana and kanji and stuff. Okay, I don't know where they're going with that. Or like Lily, right? Instead of Lily, it's like Riri, or Rire. Anyway, okay, so since this is the second game and that's the third game, and then I also have discovered the Salburg trilogy is like 12 fucking games. It's not that many. So Atelier Marie has the original game. Then it has like a pseudo like alternative history sequel for Game Boy, which is Atelier Marie 2. And then there's Atelier Elie. Then there's an Atelier Elie 2, which is another Game Boy kind of alt history like sequel, right? And then you have Atelier Marie plus Elie, which is another alt history game, which I'm not playing any of these. I'm gonna play one alt history or like maybe kind of like actual sequel after like next, right after this in a couple weeks, called Atelier Anis. I'll get to that in a minute, but so right now we got 5 games, right? Just in that. And then you have, at some point they made Atelier 1 and 2 Marie and Elie, which is not a remake of the Atelier Marie and Elie game. It's just the first 2 games, like the canon games. And it's just like you buy one disc and you get both games, essentially, which is pretty nice. That's how I played Atelier Marie. No, Elie. That's how I played Elie. I played the remake for Marie. Whew. And then, so that's not, I'm not going to count that. That's just like a remake, essentially. And then you have Atelier Lily, so that's 6. And then you have Atelier, Anise, Marie, and Elie, which is all one game. Okay, so then in Atelier, Marie, and Elie, the not remake, what you do is I think it's a Wonderswan color game, right? So again, all these like kind of anything that is like a handheld port or a handheld version is kind of like an alt. It's not like a canon, and the canon in Atelier games is very kind of like loosey-goosey, especially in these first ones. Like the Salburg, it's kind of like there is Marie. So the canon is like in the beginning, Dornabesh, or however you say his name. I've seen it spelled out like 4 different ways. Him and Lily came to the Kingdom of Salburg to like establish an alchemy academy from like wherever they were coming from, and they brought Ingrid and Herminia, I think is the correct pronunciation of the name from the Japanese I heard. Or it's like Herminia, something like that. Anyway, it's like hard to say Japanese words sometimes with like if the Italian like starts seeping out. Because it's like phonetic, it's very phonetic. Or it's very like, everything's like a verb and a consonant kind of situation. Okay, anyway, it's not like English where you just kind of like vomit out sounds that like can be whatever. Okay, so they established that, and then time goes by, and the academy is prospering, and like Ingrid and like Dorbesh or whatever, he is like the headmaster, but he kind of gets really into like, he kind of takes a back seat to like voluptuous MILFs, right? It's like Ingrid takes over kind of the daily operation and running the school and all that stuff. And that's where Marie comes in, and then Marie becomes a very, famous alchemist, and like her canon ending is the one where she goes out and like spreads the good word of alchemy throughout all the land, right? And then Elie gets saved by her at some point, and then she comes to the academy to learn and study after she studies with Marie a little bit. And then I don't know if there's really like a canon ending, because that's the end of the series, right? What we're going to follow along is that Elie becomes very good at alchemy as well, as she becomes like a Meister or a Miser or whatever, which is not the ending I got. But so she becomes like a Meister, but then she turns it down because she wants to keep running her own shop. And then her and Marie have like connected in this game, in like the third game, and then they kind of join forces and start their own atelier outside of like the academy, because Marie and Elie are both functioning within the academy, essentially, in like their own atelier as part of their like schooling and graduation requirements and stuff for 4 to 5 years, or 6 years if you unlock stuff in Elie. And then from there, that's where we're going to jump into Anise, which again is a Game Boy, I think it's a Game Boy Advance game, which is kind of like an alt history, but that's where we're following along. And in that one, they're tasked with creating books to perpetuate like the teachings as kind of like pseudo teachers, the good word of like alchemy or whatever. And then Anise comes from like a different country, and we'll talk about that more when I talk about her game in a couple weeks, to help. And so then the three of them combine forces to write these books, essentially, or use alchemy to create books of alchemy to, increase the glory of alchemy in the world. Okay, so that's kind of like the Salburg story in like its whole. Now the biggest alt history is really going to be the Marie Elie, because in that story it's very much like what if these girls combined forces, but like Anise did not come in, and it's something about like they both became very successful, but then they like were like, fuck this academy, we out, and they just kind of do their own thing. Okay, now the Game Boy games, you could almost say like they are canon-ish. They just involve because they're just like, oh, so Marie graduated, and then she just kept working. Like more stuff happened, and Ellie's the same thing. And instead of having you get like a single fairy, is my understanding. I haven't played them. It's like, man, it's a lot, because these games, my issue is that they're management sims with like a tiny bit of kind of JRPG stuff, like battles essentially, and that's it. And the stories are really not that interesting. They're very kind of bare bones, and like the most interesting part about the stories is like the individual character stories, or just, and it takes a lot of like, it's like a lot of random, or just like showing up on right days and talking to people. So it's kind of like, I'm starting to like tap out, and so I'm going to do like one more of these, and then we're going to hop to the next series in the Atelier series, because there's like eras essentially in these games, and the eras will be like drastically different in how the gameplay actually functions. Like, what's the focus? The focus of the Salburg trilogy is the alchemy portion, right? So like the only reason you fight battles is because it gives you something to do. So when you travel to locations, you can like gather things, and it makes it so you have to kind of grind out a little bit, or like it's just part of like the management. Like the battles are almost like, who gives a fuck, right? Because you can just like eye roll through them if you just like hire the right guy with enough money, and like you just kind of grind out levels a little bit. Like, it's really not that big of a thing. It can affect some of the endings, right? And I even get like harassed by Ingrid during Elie about how like my adventuring level is like maxed out, but my alchemy level's not. And I'm like, dude, my alchemy level is like 35. And to be fair, I was like, I'm gonna max this shit out, don't you worry. And then the game ended, because unlike in Marie and Lily, where it's like you have 5 years to do this, you only get 4 years, or you only go through 4 years. Or like the way I was tracking it was wrong, because I kept seeing like year 4 up in the top, where it kind of tracks like your days and whatnot. And just in case you haven't seen my other videos, because this is the third video in the series that I'm doing, the game gives you like a time limit, and like everything you do, when you work on alchemy, when you leave your shop and come back, when you go out to gather materials, sometimes you just do random shit, days go by, right? And you have like 5 years worth of days, so that's like 1,500 something days, right? Or maybe it's in like, it might be more than that. I think it is more than that, because there's more than 300 days, and 5 years times 300 is... Anyway, you have like 1,700 days in the game, right? So that's a lot, right? These games, each one of these games is taking me like 5 to 8 hours of like game time, and I'm just like cruising through, right? I'm not like spending too much time like thinking about stuff, or really like optimizing my build or whatever. The remake made it super easy of the first game, and then Elie, and then I cheated for Lily, because I'm using like machine translation based on like an OCR that I got, which is like, thank God I can understand anything that's going on. But there was like times where I was just like, I have no fucking clue what I'm supposed to do here, right? Or like what these people are talking about. So I was like, I'm just going to cheat and then kind of like muscle my way through this game. And it was fine. It still played like any of these other games. You still have to do a lot of like pulling stuff. It gave me like a little breathing room to kind of like figure out what's going on. Because it adds like, it's a third game that they made, so it adds like all sorts of more systems and stuff that like the game was having like a difficult time. Well, me and the game were having a difficult time like coming to agreement on what the game was actually asking me to do. The second game, Elie, had fan translation, which is amazing. Fan translators are like crushing it. So it was very easy to kind of like groove into that. There was like a whole thing. Okay, so I'm trying to think what else. So yeah, so the main focus of the game is you synthesize things, synthesize materials to create new stuff, and your objective is to create like at least like a certain quality of item by like the end of the 4 years, so that you can graduate. And then periodically in the second game, you can take these tests, and if you pass the test, you can move up in ranking, and then you can become like a Meister level. And if you become a Meister level, you get an extra 2 years of gameplay, and that lets you. If you get that, you unlock. 2 more years, which also unlocks like other endings, right? So otherwise you either fail or you get like the normal kind of graduate ending. When I played through it, I got the normal ending, and it was like, okay. And so I'm looking, afterwards I was looking at stuff, and I realized there was like 2 other regions of the world that I could have unlocked if I had like done certain side quests. And I mad respect for that, because if I had not looked that up, there was some hint that I'm missing something, because at some point I'm unlocking recipes, and these recipes are asking me for things that I'm like, where the fuck do I get this, right? And so finally I'm just like, I gotta, like, am I missing, like, I am clearly missing something in this game. And so I looked it up, and it's like, oh yeah, you have to go through like this whole thing with like Sharia's from the first game, who's Maria's like best friend, or Shara, however you say her name. she has like a wedding event, and you have to be engaged with the wedding event, and then Marie comes, you interact with her, and at some point it unlocks like this whole other region of the world, and you got to go there, and then they have like other spots where you can like get materials from, and that's where you get these other fucking materials from. And so by that point in the game, I was like, okay, let me try to do this, but my popularity was low because I had no idea how to get my popularity up, and your popularity has to be at a certain level so you can get rumors about the wedding and stuff. And so I'm like, I thought I got, because when the game's explaining the rules to me at the beginning, I'm like, oh, I got to turn stuff into like, there's two guys instead of one guy at the bar to like turn stuff in, like in Marie and even Lily, like these requests, there's two guys. And so the second guy, you had to get your popularity up, all you gotta do is turn stuff into him. And I'm like, cool. And I kept doing that, and I would have like negative popularity, and I was like, what the fuck is happening? And so finally I looked that up because I'm like, okay, I need my popularity to be like 32, and it's like 20. And it, I'm like in year 4, so I gotta like make sure, I gotta work on getting this to happen, right? And so I'm like, I look it up, and it's like, oh, when you turn stuff into this guy, if you're just turning in like the base level stuff, like the stuff you gather or your fairies are just gathering, you get negative popularity. And, and so you got to turn in like at least the next, like the second lowest quality. And I was like, fuck you, game. That's why my popularity has been so low this whole time, because like I'm just like turning in whatever like the cheapest thing is, because I just did not, I missed that completely. And so I was like, fuck, man. And so I finally get my popularity up to like a decent level. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to do this quest in year 5 and try to like see if I can go to these other places and whatnot. And then again, the game just like ended at year 4. And I was like, I missed so much that's going on. And then I just got the ending where Ellie, graduates, and then she starts her own atelier on the side, and just, she's going to work hard and keep striving to do the best that she can and be successful in the end, right? So that's good. But if you get other endings, she becomes like a meister, she can become a teacher, she can open up her shop with Marie, right? Which is what we're going to kind of follow as the canon, because we're going to go play the Game Boy Advance Atelier Elie. And yeah, so that's that. It was fun. What it does add, and they had this in Lily, but I didn't engage with it because again, it was so hard to like understand some of this stuff. Just trying to like in my head translate like the broken machine translated Japanese to English stuff. But you can increase like the quality of some of your items by like making blends where you like put a little bit more of something here and there. So you can do like a lot of experimentation. You can probably spend like hours just trying to figure it out. Or I'm sure there's guides, which I don't really want to engage with because I don't care that much. And then there's also, you can create your own recipes if you just like mix stuff together and you like get an idea. And I'm sure if you just like talk to people out and about, they'll give you like hints about stuff. And again, I'm sure there's guides for this, but I was like, nah, I'm good. I tried it like a couple times, and all I made was like the like core dust or whatever the fuck it's called, like the broken alchemy dust from like failed experiments or whatever. So I was like, nah, I'm good. The cast of characters is fun. You got like your school rival again. This time it's some girl who's kind of a cunt, but then she becomes nicer as time goes on. You got, what's his name? You got like handsome boy who's like the number 1 in the class, and he, flirts with you, and, you can like engage with him and stuff. And he is like the free member of your party. So I got him to like max level. Because I would just always take him out, and he sucks, and then he's good because he casts spells, and there's some enemies that are like immune to spells or whatever, and then he just like sat in the back and like healed. Ellie herself cannot cast spells, unlike Marie in the previous game, but she can get very strong. Like at some point you can like go fight in the arena, and I like was beating the shit out of guys in the arena with just her and her like Glasson staff. And Glasson's like the primo, it's like the Aurichalcum or Calcum or Adamantite or kind of like the super metal in this world. And then I just hired like the Castle Guard guy, and he just beat the shit out of stuff too. So between him and Marie, they were like really taking care of business until I got like best, like, love interest to like a significant level where his magic was very strong. And there's like there's a shop where you can buy weapons, and you can even do some like modifications on the weapons you have, but it's really like bare minimum kind of stuff. Like I got Ellie's stuff up because when she fights in the arena, she can only fight, like she'd only do attack. And then because part of it is like you can craft or synthesize a lot of like attack components, like items you can use in battle, but you can't use those in the arena either. So you really got to like maximize her adventuring levels, and you got to get her like good equipment, and you got to like modify it and stuff. So there's a little bit of like a system there. It's really what I'm saying is like it's really very like you just gotta have money, and you're like, I want you to increase the power of like this rod, which is like the best rod in the game, which is the only other. There's only 2 rods. And so you do that, and then it's like, now you're decent fighting. And she wasn't as good as the knights, because you can hire the knight from the first game too. And they'll hit for like 500 damage when you kind of max them out. And then Elie was hitting for like 300 at one point, which is good, because the love interest, his spells were only hitting for like 200 to 300 as well when he was maxed out. So not bad. Okay, let me think if there's anything else really. There's a whole thing with the prince again, and I don't understand. I'm sure there is some reason to unlock the king. Like, I read somewhere at some point that he'll give you like quests or requests or like rumors, but in both Marie and this, that like never happened. So I could just be doing something wrong. There's a lot of systems in these games, so that's pretty good. Like, the games are good. Like, I enjoy them. Like, I'm starting to be like, okay, this is the 3rd time I've played like essentially the exact same game with just like slight variations, which is cool. And I'm not playing them back to back, right? If you follow me at all, you know that like every other week and the order I release these videos is like the order I'm playing games. So I'll take like a break from like the mainline entry games that I'm playing for like my marathons, just to kind of like get myself like refreshed. And so I'm not just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm fucking doing this again. And so I'm trying to think if there's anything else to really talk about with this. It's good. I would say it's on the same level. If you understand Japanese, I could see Lily being funner, because there's like more stuff going on, and you can get like Ingrid and Herminia to like assist you as well. And they're just kind of it's like it's a 3rd game, and so it has like the most systems and the most things you can do, and you can build your little academy and you can design things how you want. So that's all like super neat and fun and whatnot. But it was like real hard. And without cheating, I think I would have been like very miserable playing that one. But between Marie and this and Elie, I don't know. I feel like this is a better game. Marie is easier because there's less shit going on. Not easier to play per se, and the remake is like super easy. I think I even had it has like an easy mode, which is probably what I played. I mean, if it had like an easy difficulty setting, that's what I used. So, because I just feel like I was like cruising along a little bit better. The Elie took like a year, like a full year of in-game like stuff to like get to a point where I feel like I wasn't just like barely holding on. Like it took that long to kind of like build up and buy all the tools and buy all the initial recipes, so I could start making money and start accomplishing requests and then getting fairies and all that stuff. I felt like Marie just kind of moved at a quicker pace. But again, I'm almost positive I was playing like an easy mode. And then the other thing about Marie is like I love it, but at the same time, for my actual gaming experience, it's like I'm missing this whole thing, and there's like no, like I would talk to people like all the time and be like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, there's got to be a rumor or something, and there is. And if I had been playing, like, if I'd actually known how the game worked with popularity, I probably would have just like stumbled in to the wedding thing. Because from what I was reading on the guide that I was looking at, if you're just like around town in spring, someone will be like, hey, this wedding thing's happening. So to unlock this site, but that would have been better, because it would have given me like more stuff to do and more places to go. Because at some point I was just like going through the motions. So I was like, all right, I think I'm like good to like get an ending on this game. That's not a bad ending. So like, how much more time do I want to like invest in this? And then it ended early, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm not really sad that happened. So yeah, it's good. Both these games, or all 3 of these games, honestly, are like 7 or 8s out of 10. Like, they're good. Chicks are hot. Like, the systems all work. It's fun. It's like there's a lot of stuff you can do. And if you're more into like this side of like just kind of like crafting things and exploring like the different like synthesis and all that stuff, I could see it being like a very like enjoyable experience. I am less into that, and since the stories are kind of weak, that's why it's more like a 7, because like they're all good and I enjoyed them and I'm glad I played them finally. But at the same time, like, I don't know if I'd ever play any of these games again, and I even got like one more left. So we'll see how that goes, but we're gonna do it, and then we'll move on to the next set of the games. I can't remember exactly what they are off the top end. It's like Gaumont series, and I think there's only 2 there, and they're probably both Japanese from what I remember. So that's going to be Ralph. But yeah, thanks for joining me on this little rant. And so go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I will catch you guys in a couple weeks for Atelier Anise, Marie, and Ellie.